Hello, the Necessities. I'm providing you with video feedback so that you'll have this resource to refer back to in order to make the changes and the revisions you'll need to make to be successful in Paper 3. So this is essentially the draft of your campaign plan that will be submitted for Paper 3. And you were asked to use the template to format and structure the content for this paper. And the template is right here, so we see it has very specific requirements for chapter titles and headings within each chapter. So the first chapter of any campaign book is a situation analysis. The second chapter is a research plan. And the third chapter is the campaign plan. And then each of these headings underneath each of these chapters are required. So I don't know what happened here, but your submission doesn't have these in it. So I've tried to add them in as best I can, but you're going to have to go back through and make sure that your paper is appropriately formatted before you complete Paper 3. And you're just going to have to take some point deductions for not following the template in Paper 1. So there's way too much first person in this paper. So let's just see how many times this paper uses the word we. 107, which is about 90 too many. So you're going to have to work to get rid of all of this first person. You've got 107 we's. You've got 78 hours. That's almost 200 uses of first person just with we an hour. And then you are very vague, so you refer to they 21 times. Who is they? You need to be much more precise in your word choice, and you've got to get rid of the vast majority of this first person narration throughout your paper. And so let's look line by line. I've done some line editing here. I haven't line edited your entire paper. The first chapter of your campaign book is the situation analysis. It begins with the background, mission, and values of your client. So generally, the way these sections starts would be to say, New Hope for Kids is a nonprofit organization located at, and then where's the address? Where do you provide the address for this organization, your client? When was it founded? And who founded it? I think you might provide some of that information down here. But when you start, every day children suffer from the grief of losing a loved one. So this content doesn't really belong in the beginning of your background, mission, and values. First, who is your client? New Hope for Kids is a nonprofit organization located at such and such an address in Maitland, Florida. New Hope for Kids was founded in such and such a year by such and such a person. New Hope for Kids was created to serve children who suffer the grief of losing a loved one. And then you can go into some of this information. You have the year here, but you're not writing an essay. You're writing a campaign book. You need to be very direct and very clear about your content here. The location, the address, years in operation. I can't find a mission statement or the values in this whole section. Now we come to the problem and opportunity statement, which you talk about their mission, but you don't tell us what their mission is above, so it's problematic. These APA citations in your text are not formatted appropriately. So every citation needs to follow APA citation rules in the text and in your bibliography as well. This content is about your campaign. It's not about problem and opportunity per se. What is the problem, the obstacle that your client is facing in trying to achieve its mission? What opportunity will your campaign leverage in order to help your client overcome this obstacle? How do you know that New Hope for Kids is well known in Maitland or that it needs more publicity in Winter Park? How do you know that? Is it just because you believe it? So you don't need to ever say we believe, we think, we feel. None of that should appear in your paper. Social media can greatly influence this. Well, what does that mean? Again, it is just time they expand. Well, why are they expanding? And what does your campaign have to do with the organization expanding? And without social media, it will be touch. This doesn't make any sense, folks. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your campaign or the Christmas drive. Is the Christmas drive something new? Is that an expansion of the organization? I just don't even really know what you're talking about. Where do you talk about the strengths of the organization and explain how you know those are the strengths of the organization? And it's just not clear that you've conducted a proper SWOT analysis here. The second chapter of this paper and your campaign book is the research plan, which begins with the secondary research report. Through secondary research, 3 similar campaigns were identified. You don't need 1, 2, 3 references, 3 first person in one sentence here. Our, we, ours. It's the campaign, this campaign. The first one is Toys for Tots. They have a similar campaign, goals, beliefs, and values as New Hope for Kids. And this isn't capitalized. Who is they? The first one is Toys for Tots, which is a similar campaign. This is just worded so that it's very difficult to read. They. Who is they? Again, this is not an APA citation. Another similar campaign is the Make-A-Wish campaign. You don't need to say we looked at, right? Get rid of all this first person. They had a toy drive because they like to look at it as a good way to help kids take their minds off their trust. They like to look at it. They like to look at it? All year they have to battle different situations, and there is not a better way to do that than an enjoyable holidays. All year. Who is they? Battle different situations. What are you talking about? What kind of situations? There's not a better way to do that than an enjoyable holidays. Really? There's not a better way to do that? How about finding a solution to the situation? I don't understand why you're writing in this way. That is a major reason why we chose to do a holiday toy drive. We believe that it is important for kids to have something to look forward to on the holidays. Well, what does your beliefs matter? This is framed as a first-person reflection, a stream of consciousness, first draft that is not appropriate for secondary research report. What were the goals and objectives of these campaigns? What were the strategies and tactics that they used? What was the timeline for these campaigns? And how can you learn from those campaigns, their goals, their objectives, their strategies, their tactics, their timelines, their budgets, in order to create a powerful campaign for New Hope for Kids? Don't tell us what they believe or what you think or feel. Just tell us about their campaigns. Specifically, the goals, the objectives, the strategies, the tactics, the timeline, the budget. Pick elements of those campaigns that can be incorporated into your campaign, not broad general ideas about believing that something is helpful or not. Next is your publics and stakeholders. Has a sufficient amount of money, and we believe. What is a sufficient amount of money, and what do your beliefs have to do with anything? What are the demographics of the Rollins community, the citizens of Winter Park and Maitland, and customers at Panera Bread? So you have identified our target audiences include the Rollins College. So you have identified 1, 2, 3, 4 different target audiences. You need to describe the demographic characteristics of each of those target audiences. You need to describe the psychographic characteristics of each of those target audiences. What are their incomes? What are their ethnicities? What are their genders? What are their ages? What are their values? What are their current activities and behaviors and beliefs that you can leverage in order to get them to purchase or to take an angel off your Christmas tree? Okay, so now we come to the Winter Park community as well as Rollins College, and you believe, this we believe, is not a campaign. It's not a campaign, okay? It's a first-person reflection on some general ideas. The primary research plan includes surveys and interviews. We will send out surveys via email. Well, you're going to create a survey on Qualtrics, and you can solicit respondents through email. Where are the interviews? Where do you talk about, why do you have interviews in there? What are the dates you're going to solicit respondents to your Qualtrics survey? What are some questions you're going to ask that relate to your campaign? Here we come to the campaign plan, which is Chapter 3 and begins with the goals and objectives. Goals and objectives. So you begin with goals, not objectives. Objectives are quantitative. There's no numbers here. There's not a single number here. The goals of this campaign are both informative and motivational because they are designed to increase awareness of New Hope for Kids among the Winter Park community and to motivate people to take angels off trees as part of the toy drive, right? Then now you have to have objectives. How many toys do you want to, or how many angels do you want to be sold, or to how many toys are you trying to collect? We have an overall goal we'd like to meet. If we meet this goal, we will have considered our campaign a success. We want to get rid of all this first person, and the objectives are quantifiable and measurable. Well, what are the numbers, and how will you measure them? How many gifts do you want to acquire? And public information. We talk about Grunig, but there's no reference. There's no citation for Grunig anywhere here. So that's a major issue, right? Okay. That is why we are looking to scholarly articles. So we don't, again, this is first-person reflection on a process. It's not explaining what you have learned. Secondary research report, or the theoretical framework, should talk about the messages. So this is secondary research. This is talking about how many people are poor. This has nothing really to do with the theory driving your campaign. The theory would relate to the messages and the channels that you're using to try to reach your audience. What are the messages and channels you're using to try to reach your audience? One of our main messages, your strategies are based on your theories. These are the themes. What type of social media, how are you going to, one strategy is to get the word out. That's not a strategy, right? A strategy would be using social media or planning and executing events. If you're going to have events at locations, so surveys are research. Surveys are not a strategy for a campaign. Surveys are conducting research. Strategy for a campaign is the messages, the themes, and the channels that you will use to increase awareness for New Hope for Kids and to collect toys through the angel trees. Surveys are research. So none of this survey and now if you're going to talk about social media, then we will use what messages and what content will be in the pictures. What will the images be of? Now you have a goal that's to reach 500 followers. That's actually an objective because 500 followers is quantifiable. So the goal is to increase awareness. The objective would be to reach 500 followers, but you don't tell us on what. 500 followers on what? On Instagram, on Twitter, on all of them? We don't know. The timeline tells us the campaign begins on what day and ends on what day. And the tactics explain exactly what will be done, what content will be posted, what days, on what social media channels. When are you going to have events at Winter Park Village? When are you going to have events at Rollins College? What locations of Panera Bread are going to have the trees? Your timeline explains when the campaign begins and ends. Never write like this on October 22, 2017, or following week. We will discuss our when does the campaign? You never use, this would be October 22 through October 25, 2017. The TH and the ND or the ST, this is absolutely inappropriate for formal writing. You can say the 1st or the 15th or the 29th when you're talking. You can never write that. You could never write that in formal writing. Or the 18th. What date does the campaign begin and end? And then what will happen on each day over the course of the campaign? What content will be posted on what social media channels, at what day, at what time over the course of the campaign? When will the trees be put up in Panera Bread? When will they be taken down? When will you have events at Winter Park Village or on Rollins College campus? I assume this is your budget here. You don't have a budget section in your paper for some reason. You just didn't follow the template at all. These are not... Okay, now we have GoFundMe and Venmo in your budget, but nowhere do you talk about creating GoFundMe and Venmo accounts as part of your campaign. You can't just suddenly present it in the budget, as that would be, you know, is that a strategy? Are you going to use crowdsourcing or crowdfunding? The paper doesn't flow, it doesn't go together, and it's not organized or formatted correctly. Well, these don't look bad, actually. InfoWars is certainly not an acceptable source for information. Do you know who writes InfoWars? Alex Jones? My God, he's the least credible person on the internet, probably. You cannot use InfoWars as a reputable, credible source. Do you know anything about Alex Jones? You got a lot of work to do, the Necessities. I urge you to meet with me before you submit your next paper, because it's going to be subject to even more severe point deductions than this one if it's not formatted correctly and the content is not organized and developed appropriately.